Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today's November 13th, 2022, and let's go over the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So today, obviously, Kherson has been confirmed to be taken by the Ukrainian army. The northern part of Kherson region is under Ukrainian control. So now there are reports of fighting underway in the Kinburn Peninsula, which is right below Mykolaiv. So this is the last part that the Russians still control of Mykolaiv Oblast, which is right before Kherson. And actually, this part is very important for me because I actually spent one of my childhood summers here in one of the resorts that is here. There is a national park of Kinburn, and there's also, if I'm not mistaken, Bielberezhnya Park. So I spent a summer here. So for me, it's very, very important that the Ukrainian army takes it back. And it could be potentially as well a very good strategic point for the Ukrainian forces to cross perhaps this area to get to southern Kherson. And apparently, the Russians have installed lots of S-300s here that they were using to shoot down in Mykolaiv. If we look down at the map here, this is the Kinburn Peninsula here. And so there are reports that the Ukrainians have been crossing, perhaps it's unconfirmed, and trying to get positioning here. And this gives them a place d'armes so they can essentially start pushing from this tiny narrow here of territory, and they can perhaps start launching an attack from here towards the entirety of the southern Kherson region. So it would be interesting to see if this is the actual strategy for the Ukrainian army. I wouldn't be surprised because of how close it is to Ochakiv. This is a very historical Ukrainian city. It was a fortress for the Cossacks centuries ago, and you can see that it's not so far to travel. And when I went there during when I was a kid, we actually took a ferry from Odessa to here, and it took about an hour. Perhaps we were in Chornomorske. I don't remember, but I took a ferry either in Chornomorske or Odessa, and it took us about an hour on the very slow ferry. So I can imagine with very fast, rapid military boats, it probably would take him about half of that, if not faster. So it's really good news. We are beginning phase two, which is taking back the entirety of Kherson here that is controlled by the Russians. So that's really interesting and good news for me. So that's a funny thing. So now the Russians are moving their Kherson capital to Henichesk, which honestly I've never heard of this town. It's probably a very small town, but it's funny because there's a comment that said, when you let HIMARS range dictate which town would be your next regional capital. So, of course, the Russians had to move it. Kherson is now under complete Ukrainian control. But you can see the distance from Kherson to Henichesk, which is about 175 kilometers. So this definitely means that the Russians did it strategically so they won't get hit by HIMARS systems and other missiles that would be within HIMARS range, which makes sense for them. But either way, this is not going to be long before I think the Ukrainian army gets to Henichesk. And I think before the winter, the Ukrainian army should take back the entirety of this region. The biggest challenge will be Crimea because the Russians have been reinforcing it since 2015 when they fully annexed the peninsula. So that will be the challenge, is getting through here. But Kherson region, their defenses are light, they're in panic, and they haven't been really well prepared to really defend a very long border. As we look here, it's a very long border here. It's about 400 kilometers from, the very end point of, or start point of Kherson, all the way up to almost Enerhodar, which is in Zaporizhia, but very close. So it's going to be difficult for the Russians to really defend this entirety because the Ukrainians can cross anywhere on the Dnipro region here or really in Ochakiv and enter through here. So it will be definitely something we will be looking at in the next few weeks in terms of movements. So this is some pictures I wanted to show you guys. It's the filth and lack of discipline that the Russians lived in. These are some of the many, many pictures that were posted by the Ukrainian army. And this is in a school somewhere in Kherson. And these were the living quarters of the Russian soldiers. And you can see just how disgusting the living conditions were. And they had zero discipline. This is how they were sleeping, like trash everywhere. There is also very disgusting pictures of the washrooms, which I'm not going to show you, but it's absolutely disgusting, like animals. This is the kitchen. Just absolutely, again, nothing was washed. You see like dishes full of like, I don't even know if it's blood or whatever, but just you can see how filthy the Russian soldiers were, and it really shows the discipline that they have within the army. There is none. And unfortunately, with this lack of discipline comes a lot of destruction and littering all over the place. So there's going to be a lot of work to do in the upper Kherson region to bring it back to normalcy. But I just can't believe like that's below human living standards, right? It's really getting back to like animal, and animals even that then live better than that. So yeah, so interesting. Yesterday or 2 days ago, reported that the Ukrainians were building a wall with the Belarusian border, and so Belarus apparently is outraged that Ukraine is strengthening its borders. Oh well, and it's very funny because Belarus is an aggressor country by default, because just like Russia, before the war, the Belarusian Minister of Defense here said gave his Ukrainian counterparts his word as an officer that the Russian troops would not enter Ukraine from Belarus. It would not be possible. They would never do this. But not only did the Russian soldiers enter, as we remember, through the territory of Kiev and Chernihiv oblasts, but they've also since then been shelling and allowing the Russians, if not even the Belarusian army, has been shelling Ukrainian cities from Belarusian territories for the whole almost 9 months of the war. So the outrage here is just very funny from them, coming from a nation, I should say from a government, because I know the nation is not supporting Lukashenko, but from a government that has been sponsoring terrorism all across Ukraine. So personally, I could care less what Lukashenko and his gang of crooks think, but it's only fair and I think logical to do this. And we need to mine everything between the Ukrainian and Belarusian border to make it as safe as possible so no second invasion can happen. And lastly, again, this shows really the brutality within the Russian army, especially within Wagner, the private military company owned by Prigozhin. And this is not going to obviously show you this video, but there was a brutal execution of a Wagner soldier, which was as well applauded by a lot of pro-Russian channels on Telegram. So this was a soldier, and you can see this is from a video a month ago that was taken when he was captured by the Ukrainian army. And he just confesses that he was a prisoner back in Russia. He was recruited by Wagner. And as he was captured, now he says that he doesn't want to fight. He's against Putin, basically really reverberating a lot of pro-Ukrainian words. And apparently he was kidnapped by Wagner, or perhaps he was exchanged. I don't remember, or I don't know what the truth is. Here it says that he was kidnapped back by Wagner and he was executed by them. And the execution style was very brutal, as in they used a sledgehammer on his head to kill him. So the video is quite brutal. I don't recommend you guys seeing it, but watching it, but it's very, very brutal. And it shows, this is what Ukrainians have to face with, is this brutality within the Russian army. And Wagner, by default, is part of the Russian army. And there's a lot of Russian soldiers that have the same, we've seen reports of them doing the same to Ukrainian prisoners of war. And so this is why, again, I will reiterate many times that the Ukrainian forces need to defeat this evil, because this evil cannot win in Ukraine, because this is what's going to happen to all the Ukrainian people in the future if we lose and the Russians gain complete foothold in Ukraine. So yeah, it's quite sad, but you know what? It's just the way that the Wagner private military company does it. So now I have a few videos I want to show you. So this is allegedly, first, this is a video of the Ukrainian armed forces crossing the Dnipro River, perhaps towards Kherson, and perhaps towards the Kinburn Peninsula, as I've shown in my first slide. So let's take a look. It's a very quick video. Yeah, so you can see that there's flares, so they can see where they're going, and their own like rafts. So quite interesting. If that is actually the case, them crossing the river, then it's very, very quick, and there's no time wasted by the Ukrainian army. So this second video is Chornobaivka. So this is the infamous airport that was hit like 100 times by the Ukrainian army right here. And the Russians have lost hundreds of military assets here. And now we have official video. There's lots of videos, but it's official video confirmation of like their losses, and it's quite heavy. and these are the things that they weren't able to take out of the airport. So you have tanks, lots of military trucks, APCs. I mean, they've been reduced to shreds completely. So yeah, that was the way of life in Chornobaivka during the Russian occupied times. So again, the civilians in Kherson are not wasting time. They are already changing the colors from Russian colors to Ukrainian colors. Let's take a look. Yeah, and full of a positive mood, positive attitude. I love it. Yeah, I think the blue and yellow colors are really hot right now in Kherson if you want to buy paint. So it's quite interesting. And last video is in Makivka, which is in Luhansk. If we look at the map, apparently it was taken by the Russians, I think yesterday, somewhere around here. Yeah, but now it is back in Ukrainian control. You could see that the Russians managed to kind of get a foothold in Makivka, but the Ukrainians pushed them back, and we have video confirmation of the Ukrainian forces in Makivka. And you can see that it says here at the down in Ukraine, it was difficult. So it was a difficult fight for the Ukrainian forces to take it back. I mean, look at the destruction of the city. It's terrible. You have, broken houses everywhere. The roofs are completely destroyed. It looks terrifying, to be honest. And you know what? The rebuilding effort is going to be massive in Ukraine. And I'm personally planning to go to Ukraine to help with that rebuilding effort 100%. So that's it, guys. So thank you for watching my video. Really appreciate your support. I'm again super happy that the Ukrainian forces are having so much success on this front. We needed that to prove, the Ukrainian forces needed that to prove to the world that we can win against the Russians. We can push them back. And again, all the Ukrainians want is just to push the Russians back where they belong, and it's in Russia, not in Ukraine. So it's going to be a challenge, but within the next few months, lots of good things are going to happen because the Russians have lost the capacity to push. And so it only means good things for all of us, all the people that support the Ukrainian forces. Again, thank you so much for your support. Please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment about what you think of today's events, and like my video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.